This is a very interesting and unique webinar because we are situated in Nigeria, and what is like, I believe what concerns us as people the most, which is electricity. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows our challenges. Everybody knows that electricity is an issue. For the past 4 decades or so, we've been having electricity issues, and there are different reforms, different laws, different policies, different systems, being rolled out by successive governments. And so, but this one is quite unique because now we have a situation whereby the state government has now been allowed through the Electricity Act of 2023 to not only play a bigger role in the electricity value chain, but also generate their own electricity and then being able to distribute it and then decide, some of the things that's going on within their state, despite the nuances, but, for me, I believe that is something that is welcoming and is worth discussing. And that's why we are having this webinar. So I'll start with Mr. Daniel. Mr. Daniel, is a very major stakeholder and player in the value chain. He runs a electricity firm, not an energy firm that provides these services across the country. So I would like to start with you because I feel like this is something that affects you, affects your business, and affects your customers and whatnot. So let's talk a little bit about pricing system as of today, right? Because my belief is that we have this issue of tariffs, this issue of what pricing model should work. Yes, we've had electricity being devolved to the state, right? But pricing still centralized, is still managed to a large extent by the federal government, So with the new framework, the new system in place, what do you think the pricing structure as of today, is in any way, influence the confidence of investors? Do you think that there's something there for investors?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thanks for that question, right? Very interesting topic, and I'm happy to be speaking about this because, like you mentioned quite correctly, the business we do at First Electric, boils around investing in the energy sector. And if the sector doesn't promote investment, then we also won't be able to grow as much as we would like to. So what has changed in the new framework, right? So a few things have happened. One is the cost reflective signals are finally appearing, at least at the top end of the band, right? Not throughout the entire band segregations we have. The April 2024 supplementary MITO, right, moved band A customers to 225 and later reversed that to around 206 naira per kilowatt hour, which is a step in the right direction, right? The reason why I say it's a step in the right direction, contrary to what most people are feeling like they're paying more on the energy tariff, is because for the first time, we're starting to have a cost reflective tariff, right? And this is something that investors have been clamoring for a long time. Another thing that's also come up is, like you mentioned, which is quite correctly, is the state involvement in having their own regulatory agencies. We have a few states, and this hasn't gone around all 36 states, right? We have like Enugu State, Ondo State, Lagos State. These are kind of the states that have adopted a more concrete regulatory framework. Okay, and that's a good thing because it allows for investors to approach states where they are and can possibly allow for quick access or quick approvals where necessary. Another thing that I think has also come out recently is the eligible customer regulation, right? Which allows, if you're buying volumes, a lot of energy, you can enter into a direct relationship with a GenCo and have your own bilateral agreements. So to your question, right? What does this mean from a competitive landscape? Few things. Number one, it's sent a signal that there is a clear indication that the government is willing to match, to basically index the tariff. And that's exactly what we need. It's not so much trying to get the lowest tariff or the highest tariff, it's getting a tariff that is transparent and predictable. So as an investor, I can see that if the inflation in Nigeria goes up 20% every year, then we should know that this tariff is indexed to inflation, is indexed to the gas price, and this tariff should track the market. This is exactly what we need, right? This is exactly the kind of predictability that we want in the industry. Right. So, in summary, I will just because let me just want to allow others to talk as well. So, price competition isn't about raising tariff to the bottom. It's about reliability, transparency, and revenue assurance. So that's kind of what is coming out. Revenue assurance is something that we still need to talk about, but I think it's this new framework gives us at least the starting point to start that conversations of what we need.
Absolutely, revenue assurance when we are talking about investors, because if you are in the sector, anybody's going to tell you that um, the sector is struggling with liquidity, right? And there's not enough tariff collection, enough revenue collection. And if you have a system that can guarantee that kind of revenue assurance, I feel like it's a step in the right direction for the investor. Like you said, that's absolutely brilliant. I'm going to stay with you for a moment, because most of the things that are going on in the sector, we still have a very strong government presence, right? The government still decide a lot of things, and the government still, even though we talk about privatization, which is the word we use, 2013 privatization reform and whatnot, but the government is still very present in everything that's going on. Do you think that this sector, this change, this devolution of power, so to speak, no pun intended, do you think it gives the private sector a larger role? Do you think the government will see more of private players in the value chain bringing in their capital, playing larger role than just having the government run things?
Yeah, I believe so, and the reasons I do are the following, right? What I think, first of all, the government will always have a role to play, right? But
Mhm.
the kind of investment the power sector needs is something that the government alone cannot do by themselves. So they need to create the enabling environment for private sector capital to come into the space. It doesn't have to be bringing in money per se, right? But for example, one thing is the tariff issue which we spoke about. Another thing is putting some kind of guarantees, or even if the government cannot put guarantee by themselves, create an enabling environment, where investors, either foreign capital investors or local currency investors, can bring in money. But now, thank God that the what the government has done recently with the floating exchange rate, at least we know what the exchange rate between the US dollar and the naira is, right? And it's been stable for at least more or less a year. This is a step in the right direction. At least investors can bring in FDI and they can be assured of repatriation of their funds when the right time comes. So yeah, I think 100% the economy and the climate is sending the right signals for investors to bring in money. And also the REA is doing a lot in collaboration with the World Bank to create some kind of stimulus or subsidies or
Hmm.
incentives, if you may, for decentralized generation. Because to be honest, the way the grid is structured today, cannot solve all the problems of Nigeria energy access. It has to be a combination of the main grid, which is the TCN operated grid, and then the mini grids, microgrids, and the mesh grids, all kind of solar energy or renewable energy technology working hand in hand with the normal thermal main grid to actually solve the energy access problem. So there's a lot of things going on the REA side, and there's some things going on the grid side. And I think working together, it has created a very nice climate. Is getting better for investors to come into Nigeria to solve this problem we have.
Think that's a positive note. Is getting better. Mr. Umar has joined us now. Mr. Umar, if you would, please, let's see your face. On mute and on your camera so we can see you, and just to keep the conversation going so um we don't waste our time. I'm just going to move on to Mr. Triumphant. Mr. Umar, welcome. We're very happy to have you here. You have, Mr. Triumph, you have a lot, of role you're playing in the state level. We're talking about state electricity. We're talking about state involvement. We're talking about subnationals. I think Lagos State, though, I know they have had their regulatory oversight body, but they've not really unraveled their electricity market the way we see in Enugu and other places like that was mentioned before. What do you think, in your own opinion, based on the work you're doing so far? What do you think, in your own opinion, would be like a low-hanging fruit for the state? Lagos State is the economic center of Nigeria. They consume more electricity, more energy than any other state in Nigeria. And there's a lot of industries there. What do you think is the go-to for the government as they unravel their own market?
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, it's a pleasure to be speaking here. Yes, for Lagos State, it's also a very interesting dynamic given, the two discos that are currently working in the state. But, when we speak about the electricity market itself, when we speak about the liquidity crunch you spoke about, when we also look at, the interesting things Daniel had said, on the core of it really is issues with the ATC and C losses, right? So just in general, speaking for Lagos, speaking for every other state that are also planning to set up their own electricity market, I mean, you can check the data from NERC. I think it's already about 39% ATC and C loss itself, not even already, going to operational and, and other fees and capital that are involved in this. So to me, that's one of the major focus. That's a low-hanging fruit. That's something, if you solve, definitely you are going to see investors come into and spend their money. And when we are talking about ATC and C losses, we are talking about technical. So we are talking about the grid itself. We are talking about and the distribution itself. When we talk about the commercial, we are talking about energy theft and also meter tampering. Those are key things that I think, as much as we're able to solve these things, that is deep in 39% of whatever investment you put. If you can take this out, then we are sure, of course, putting regulations that are investor friendly. Another interesting thing about the state market is it becomes easier for you to work with the state itself. It becomes easier to set up the license. It becomes a lot more streamlined. It becomes a lot more easier for investors to come in, have a one-on-one with with the committee set up and just being able to solve the license. I think on a very national level, it became quite cumbersome and a little bit of a run around access to some of the people there. So having it on a state level will become a lot more better for investors. So the licensing issue, if we are able to solve that, make it a much more streamlined search, much more streamlined for investors. That's something we could work on. He also spoke about a lot more, renewable energy coming into the grid.
Yeah.
Of course, we are also looking at all of this. It becomes very attractive when we are speaking on Lagos. We are talking about hydro, the opportunities for hydro. We are looking at. I know there are conversations going around on having onshore windmills, for instance, which actually is better. So Lagos is literally the prime the prime location for things like that. Licensing for things like that is very easy. Speaking on the commercial aspect of things and speaking on the energy theft itself. Now we look into capacity building. Low-hanging fruit is having the campaigns out there. I know I spoke about advocacy for LC and having the campaigns out there. Of course, also having rules and regulations that put a penalty for energy theft and meter tampering. We need to educate people that the transformers and the connections that are in your area, they belong to you, they belong to the people. Just having to do all of this. I think if we are able to really just solve our ATC and C losses, actually engaging, the opportunity for people to engage directly with the government and for investors to engage directly with government, it will basically be smooth sailing
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. And I agree with you because Lagos is one state I would say that seems to, always get things right. The kind of challenges we have in the electricity space, though national, when you're talking about exceptions, I would say Lagos is one of it. And now that they are unraveling their market, like you said, investment is important. Like you said, allowing a climate where people can bring in their capital and, expect a return of that investment, very, very important. Directly being able to connect and collaborate with the government without bottlenecks and bureaucracies, very, very important. And I think those are the things I think the government of Lagos, I feel they are competent enough to, obtain that, as they unravel and unfold their own market. We'll wait and see. Mr. Abubakar Umar and I, we've been having conversations, not conversations, but I think just back and forth, about the pricing tariff, especially the controversies in Enugu recently. And we are all looking at what was happening, what exactly is going on, and does the state have the right to this, or state have the right? I'm going to bring him in now. Just tell us a little bit about himself. Mr. Umar has been around for a while. He speaks on different fora, on TV station and whatnot, and he's very passionate about the power sector in Nigeria, by the way. So, Mr. Umar, please just give us a little bit of introduction, and we can get started. Welcome.
Yeah, Cyrus, good afternoon. Apologies for not turning on my video. I'm actually not at the office, so I hope you understand that. So good afternoon to the all panelists and then the entire participant. So it's been an interesting discussion. I've been listening to the first two speakers who have discussed a lot regarding the ATCNC and how investment in the sector is very important. So if you may recall your question so that I can properly respond to it.
Okay,
Cyrus.
so I wanted you to introduce yourself first, but it's fine. You want to get into it, let's get into it. I think one of the questions I would like to ask you, can you walk us through some of the changes that we're seeing regarding distribution and generation, given the current framework, given the current way of doing things, given the current legislation
Yeah.
of Electricity Act 2023?
Yeah, so it's a good one. Thank you for that. So Electricity Act, since it was signed around 2023, it comes with a lot of changes which many people are familiar with. But I think the key line here is that it allows for the subnationals to regulate the electricity, within their geographical boundaries. So Electricity Act currently has some features. One is that it allows states, for instance, like Lagos, to regulate the distribution of electricity, and then it allow also the Lagos state to regulate generation companies that are operating within Lagos, things like IPPs and other. It gives the state the power to regulate all the value chain, but the value chain must be operating within your state. So if a particular generation company is sending electricity to the grid, or is trying to send electricity to another state like Ogun State, then at that point, you have the federal regulator has to come in for that to happen. So this is some of the unique, important features of the act. And then it also talks about the host communities, which happen on the first amendment, whereby the host communities will be paid from total operational cost of the GENCOs operating within that location, similar to what we know in the oil and gas industry. And then apart from that, the act is also in the process of amendment now, and they're bringing a whole lot of things on that amendment. And it's like the interesting part, because they're trying to say that all states, like all the 36 states plus the FCT, are supposed to transition to their state electricity market at the maximum of 18 months. So after 18 months, if you decide not to pass your own law, the NEC is going to hand over or create a temporary way to ensure that all state of the federation, are now regulating their electricity. And they also, put some provisions which some industry stakeholders do not, some, I will say, maybe a controversial, whereby if some discos are not performing, they can decide to revoke their license, and then to take them into receivership or something like that. So this is a very tricky part, considering that we have a lot of laws, we have good laws, but sometimes I don't believe that laws alone will make things to work. We can write the perfect laws in the world, but there will always be loopholes. Somebody might decide not to do anything, and at the end of the day, you realize that the government are the one that is going to take over, the burden of that liability. So these are some of the provision. Also, the Electricity Act created the what they call the Forum of Electricity Regulators, whereby these are all to reduce dispute that we know, something like what happened in Enugu All
Mm.
this is to reduce such kind of things. And they also put forth a provision that may likely, what do you call it, the privatize or maybe commercialize. I may privatize, I will say that's the right word, of the NDPSC plan, which are not performing for long. That NDPSC plan, it's also about 4,004 gigawatt in capacity, but then we are not getting more than 20% of it. So all these provisions are still something that is ongoing at the National Assembly, but I believe it's good for the sector entirely, because it's trying to de-risk a lot of things. Because as Daniel was talking, you need private sector players to assist the sector, but without you de-risking the very important aspect of it, I don't think and we are going to get where we want. And the most important aspect of what the electricity had brought, is the NISO issue, the what do you call it, bifurcation of the TCN into two independent entities, the National Independent System, Nigeria Independent System Operator, and then the transmission service provider, TSP, and the NISO. So those are two important and system. But as we know, the ownership of the TSP is with the government, while the ownership of the NISO is government and the industry stakeholders at large. So by and large, the act is good. I will say, at least there are reservations about the capacity of the subnationals and the financial capability of them to do the right thing. But then, as you know, when you decentralize something, some people will get it right, some people will get it wrong. At the end of the day, those who fail will learn from those who have succeeded in that aspect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like, I think I love how you ended it by saying that there are reservations about the capacity, and not all states have the same electricity need. Not all states have the same electricity demand, and even not all states have the same revenue collection efficiency, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You've spoken long about this, about how some state or even some region that electricity being provided for, have a
yeah,
very low revenue efficiency that really make it difficult for the discos to perform well and to do their job. So they're going to
yeah,
learn, like I think I like that. They're going to learn from those who get it right. And there's a need to collaborate with the private sector to collaborate, because the government, I think from Mr. Daniel, I said the government would always come in and take up the liabilities of what's going on, but we'll see all of that pan out,
y-
as
yeah.
the whole thing unfold. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Daniel. Like I said, Mr. Daniel, your role is the private sector, and I think given everything that has been discussed so far, is becoming increasingly more visible that you guys would be the dominant player in the coming years if things turn out the way we expect them to turn out. And so I would ask you, like, um, what do you think are like the major issues for the private sector that has been touched on in this new market system, or probably you think it's being ignored, or something that you think that it's the role of the private sector that is not being emphasized upon, or you think, oh, this is a plus for the private sector, in the act?
So I think, thanks for that question. Mr. Abubakar Umar has touched on some of them, and I'll just touch on a few of them. The Act already touches on quite a few of these bottlenecks, if you may. For example, the whole state's regulatory regulation is one of the bottlenecks, which the Act has addressed, right? Grid operations is getting cleaner, which was also touched on. Now we have the TSP and the NISO system, and which definitely is very, very good, because it gives the market operation more focus, and it allows more access to financing and potentially better grid reliability, which is also good. Also, it's brought in a little bit of de-risking because of the eligible customer bilateral contracting between Gencos and customers. And then this brought some kind of realism to the tariff structure, albeit not across board, but at least it's something in the right direction. What I think still needs to be done is right now, except with the exception of Band A, there's a total suppression of tariffs. I 100% agree that it should be a civil service level delivery. But what I think the government can do is, instead of suppressing tariff, is to subsidize the people that need to be subsidized, right? Those low income earners, that potentially it will get affected by more of a tariff, cost reflective tariff being rolled out across board, identify who these people are and subsidize these people instead of subsidizing the entire country. And this was what we did in the case of the petroleum, AGO, DPK. We were subsidizing the entire country. In fact, we were subsidizing neighboring countries, right? Because it was not a cost reflective mechanism, right? So if you make it cost reflective across board, and then you subsidize the people that need to be subsidized, I think that would seriously send the right signal to the sector to drive more investment. One more thing I need to add before I stop is most of the contracting agencies will be the discos. The discos are probably going to buy most of the powers that are generated by the gencos. And one of the major problems we have today is a lot of the discos we have cannot enter into take or pay agreements. If you understand what take or pay agreements is, if you give them power, if I supply you this power, you have to pay for it, whether you distribute it or not, right? And the reason why most of them cannot is because from a bankability standpoint, financially, they're not strong enough. So we have to address that elephant in the room, right? If the discos can enter into bankable agreements, take or pay agreements, it's a no-brainer. With a PPA from a disco, and that PPA is bankable with the right commercial or financial agreements behind it, any bank would release money to build a new power plant or whatever, or to make a new investment in infrastructure. So that's kind of my thoughts around.
Absolutely. But some people would say that the issue of the tariff, I think the two main thing will be, how do we target those who are low income, those who are below the economic ladder? Because even when the NEC came up with the cost reflective tariff for the ban, and they said 15% of users, they said it's going to be targeted at those who are high income earners who stays in high income neighborhood. But we've had reports of people who are low income who also fall under that feeder, and it becomes even more difficult to unravel when you're doing it nationally and you're trying to target, people that low income, and so it's a little bit dicey there because people live in different parts of the country, and electricity is evenly distributed in different parts of the country, so it can be a little bit difficult. What do you think?
I think it's not a geographical identification. You don't say people that are living in a certain area are low income. No, it's not by where you live, right? It's by what you earn. I mean, this is 2025. We have federal government, we have state government, we have local government, we have wards, we need to do our job as politicians, elected government officials, to identify people. We have BVN, NIN, passport number. If with all these things you cannot identify your citizens, then we have a long way to go, right? So instead of saying these are the barriers, let's identify the bottlenecks to doing the right thing, and let's start working towards that right direction of knowing who Nigerians are. Nigerians are not living on Mars, they're living in Nigeria. Who are the Nigerians? What's their income? What's their national identity number? What's their BVN? How much enters their bank account? It's simple, and we subsidize those people.
Absolutely. And you're very clear. I think it's an issue of efficiency, in service delivery. It's an issue of government doing what they should do in terms of data collection and data accuracy. I totally agree with you on that point. Let me bring in back Mr. Triumph. I'm going to ask you, looking at the reform and market dynamics, right? What's your honest outlook for Nigerian sector? What do you think, if you're looking at in the next 5-10 years, climate, for example, renewable energy has come to stay. Nigeria has a huge competitive advantage in terms of sunlight, in terms of, the renewable adoption. You mentioned something about floating of wind farms and things like that, which are quite very, very brilliant. But what do you think? What's your outlook like? Are you positive? Are you cautious? What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, a lot of data, a lot of research has been done. There are lots of reports, and I still think a lot of work still needs to be done, which, executing the electricity market dynamics to a state market dynamics will help curtail. We still have the problem with a lot of regulations really just mixing with each other. There's a bit of complexity there. And, we also need to solve our liquidity crisis. Yes, if you go around, we see commitments by people, we see commitment by countries, So the outlook is great. The future is bright. We just need to get it right. Just like, Mr. Daniel has said, if we don't also have the data, data of the common man in Nigeria, we are not really ready to go anywhere. So as much as the future is bright, there's still a lot of work to be done. As much as we are still putting our foot in front of the other, as much as we are working towards, towards it. I think, in 5 years, it is bright. We need to solve our liquidity crisis. We need to make sure, we are sure of what we want to do in the market, streamline a lot of those, regulations or policies that are not really helpful. And I'm quite
I remember
pessimistic.
I was watching about a month or two ago the DJ of TCN saying given the political determination of the government right now, the framework in place and everything, that Nigeria would have 24 hours electricity. Nigeria should be able to enjoy 24 hours electricity in 5 years. Yeah, and I think he made that statement about 2 months ago. Do you share that sentiment? Do you think like we're in that place
So,
whereby in
okay.
5 years
Okay.
we should
So first
have
off,
that?
I am of the opinion, all right, that if we really want to hit targets, like start putting numbers, 5 years, we need to be able to run electricity, be able to, how do I say this now? The value chain. If we can take or separate it from the political angle of things, yes, I will see it happen. You understand? Because saying we want to do it is one thing and political will is another. And just like a lot of, you can see the REA doing this, having, developers, run the mini grid setup in, wherever they set up, having them basically own it and run it and make money from it. If we're able to really just, take all of the things we're implementing there and bring them into the main grids, yes, it's going to be hard. Not in entirety, maybe not the whole grid. Of course, the government will definitely want to have a hand in it. Look at what Abia State is doing with geometric. As long as there's political will, it's going to work. So, but if we can take out a major portion of it and have it run on its own, so the issue of this administration is coming to make promises, and next administration, we are sure of continuity. If we can have that separation, for sure there will be continuity. And when there's continuity, there's progress. When there's progress, there's innovation. And when there's innovation, the problems will start falling down like dominoes one at a time. And we are going to reach, the point where we are 100% energy access, electricity access, and,
I like your confidence and I like your optimism. That's the word I'm going to use. But we'll keep our finger crossed. And like you said, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. It goes beyond just the promises and even the political statement that comes along with it. But TCN said it. We are with. Mr. Umar, let me bring back Mr. Umar. Private sector have been said a lot on this webinar. We know that they are going to determine the next future of the electricity market in the state. What do you think that the changes, right? We talked about government, state, subnational, but what do they mean for the private sectors? What do they mean for every player, from the grid to the distribution to the, those who sell, different units and different value chain? What these changes that we are seeing that you spoke about, that there are even some still underway in the National Assembly? What do you think the private sector, what does it
Yeah,
mean for them in the short and long term?
yeah, so thank you, Saru. So, the thing is that private sector players, they are not that much concern on what you put on paper, but on the substantive activity of what is on ground, what is happening. Private sectors are not for big English or big promises. They are more of result. For instance, now, if somebody wants to go and invest in Enugu and he observes those kind of controversies and disagreements happening, he will pause his investment and reassess what is the situation there. So most time, challenge with the private sector is that they are trying to ensure that the place they have a good off takers, and then government is actually supporting government in that particular region. Because one challenge with the electricity act is that it's not about you passing it and then calling on investors. Nobody is going to come until he did his assessment and realize that there is viability in that. And that's why I find there will be a little bit problem for us to actualize this electricity act. It will take time. For instance, if you're in Lagos, if you have an estate or something like that, and then you want electricity supply, you can have more than 10 people that are lining down to provide power to that particular place, because everybody believes that Lagos has the capacity, or people there residing has the capacity to pay for that power. But if you move to other state, you find that investors are very reluctant to do activities there. Even if they decide to do it, you find out that they are trying to look for a payment guarantee mechanism from the government. So a lot of investors, I have by experience, I see a lot of people want to invest, but they are looking for government to be the, to escrow the offtake in a way that their revenue will be assured from that region. So, and I think that's the problem. The reason why investors are doing so is because they are not, that confident on the recovery of their investment or revenue recovery in that particular region. And that's why government need to come and take some of the aspect of it. For instance, number one, one of the things that distort our electricity model is the lack of metering. Metering plays a huge role. Assuming the entire country is metered, a lot of investors will feel very happy to go and deploy the electricity anywhere. But because of lack of meters now, so investor wants to invest or do a power plant or solar plant somewhere, he has to put the cost of metering and other things, inside his cost, which will balloon the tariff, which and as you know, citizens is facing high purchasing power, a lot of all those kind of issues. So the risking the sector, for instance, like 100% metering of all the customers will make investors take over a lot of places that the government is lagging behind. Because by the time you have fixed your network, you have improved power quality, frequency, and voltage in a lot of places, a lot of investors will just put their money somewhere and just get what they are going to get at that place. And by that will push the sector to move to a phase whereby the energy, the electrons that is deployed on the grid is recovered. For every 100 naira of energy generated inside the sector, they have been able to recover it because of the risking and ensuring a lot of loopholes have been closed. But whenever you have inefficiencies, as long as the inefficiencies is getting more and more intense, that means you are just increasing the tariff cost. And when you keep increasing tariff costs, you are technically creating unaffordability to the various class of citizens, which will make investment to be not so suitable in a lot of places, apart from Lagos, Abuja, maybe Port Harcourt, and some other high-brow areas that can affect such kind of thing. So the thing is, investors are looking at locations whereby government have actually rigged some areas, and that's why they will get in. REA is also trying, but you can see where REA is working. Most of the REA projects are grants, which allow investors to come and deploy it. So the World Bank through the REA give you grant, you go and invest somewhere, and then people pay that money. So over time, you can be able to recover, the fund. So that grant, is more like another, part of risking the investment scheme in the area, that is energy access. But my last takeaway from this will be like the government need to come and do a lot of risking from the grid, because the development we want will have to come from the grid. Yeah, renewable is good. A lot of other people that are on the surf and on-surf areas are getting the energy from renewable energy, solars and the like, which is a good one, considering grid might be a very something that is not considered to reach them for now. So, but the government need to give a lot of attention and need to sink a lot of money in the grid so that people will come and supplement the activities. Because without us strengthening the grid, I'm not sure like balkanizing it here and there, little by little, we can get what we want. Really, what we can only get is that some segment will get what they want, and then another segment will lag behind. And for how long they will lag behind, that's a question that we can't answer for now.
Mm. That's a lot. That's a lot to unpack. But I have this question.
Yeah,
I've heard about this issue of metering. Is
yeah.
metering the role of the government or the role of the discos?
Yeah, so metering by the design, metering is an asset that belongs to the disco. That is why they are charging the cost of metering inside the tariff. But the challenge is that when you cap the tariff, then government is merely assisting to ensure that it has moved beyond. We have made so many mistakes. I don't want to dwell on that. But each aspect of the amount of money that the government is investing in metering is a loan to the discos. They are going to pay back at a lesser interest rate. So it's not like a free, it's just like government is assisting them with a loan that they are going to, get it and meter people faster so that they can recover the fund. But metering is 100% the responsibility of this cost. And that is why also, maybe I forgot to mention, that part of what is in the amendment is forcing the discourse to recapitalize,
Mm.
the state. So the recapitalization is needed. And part of the thing when you recapitalize is that we have to ensure, we all know that metering will be top of the investment aspect that they are going to utilize that money for. So that's just it. And I believe that that recapitalization is a very important one because the discourse, a lot of people are saying that they did not bring a lot of money, they did not invest. Yeah, rightly or wrongly, they just need to put a lot of money on that metering. And I believe that by the time a lot of people are metered, the what do you call it? The investment will change. Like by the time people are metered, the model will change. You will not have that kind of estimated billing problem. So by the time you change the model, you can now also align a strategy that can recover your funds easily. So that's
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 that's that's That's quite insightful, and I totally agree with you because and you said something that I feel like it needs to be emphasized here, the issue of government paying attention to efficiency and service delivery of the discourse is very, very important. It just goes beyond just the laws because, like you said, the private sectors, the private players themselves will not take the liability if the climate
yeah
is not risked. If there's not, confidence that I'm going to get my money back, I'm not going to put my money here, right? And the
yeah
discos, in my opinion, are getting away with a lot of things, right? Discos don't provide cables, they don't provide transformers, they don't, even some of their own facilities, if they are being destroyed or
yeah
being disrupted, the people sometimes do that, and sometimes they have to wait for the federal state government to come in and put their money. All these things are things that I think the government needs to implement, and I totally agree with you. Let me come to you, Mr. Daniel, because I feel like there's a lot that has been said and needs to be unpacked. But I want to talk about closing the energy access gap. Subnational generation, subnational distribution. Yes, nice stuff and everything, but we still do not have, we still have issue with energy poverty, right? We
Mhm.
still have issue with blackout. We still have issue with national grid collapse. Thankfully, this year it has been quite minimal, almost non-existent, but we have all of these issues. But again, I keep talking about private sector and private individuals and whatnot, but what do you think, you guys come in, First Electric, other people in the value chain, in terms of meeting this access and, covering all these gaps that are, scattered across the country?
Okay, I'm gonna debunk some myths right now. Okay, let's make this a very provocative session, right? There are a few communities I operate my solar energy assets, and these are remote communities. They have 24 hours light. Okay, 24 hours. Their light does not go off at all, right? And there was a comment made by Mr. Abubakar Umar that maybe Lagos and some places can afford tariff. It's not really true. In these remote communities where I operate, I charge around 350 naira per kilowatt hour, which is more than band A, is more than what band A is. And the local settlers that live in those villages are happy to pay that high tariff because they are getting value for it, right? So I really believe it's not about the tariff. Nigerians can actually afford a high tariff. I think the problem of the sector is there's a lot of leakages. Like my friend Mr. Triumph said, the AT&C losses are very, very high. If only 50% of the people are actually being the ones paying all the bills, then it becomes unsustainable. So what do I think is the solution here? So I think on the mini grid side, they should continue doing what we're doing right now. I think we've seen that mesh grids, mini grids, they can solve the rural energy access. Okay. And in the cities like Abuja, Lagos, where we operate, I think we need to metering is a very big thing, right? Metering is a very big thing. And yeah, bankability of the discos. We need to go back to the discos, and we need to, in my opinion, we need to unbundle the sector. There's an issue that Mr. Abubakar Umar raised just now, which is, or was it? I think it was you that said that the discos are not buying transformers. The discos are, if something damages in one area, they are not motivated to go and fix it. That is because the system is broken, right? The discos are incentivized to go where they can reap money, right? Because they are in charge of collection and they are in charge of everything. I think we need to do one more layer of restructuring. Let the discos only have infrastructure, and they make money only when electrons pass through their infrastructure. If electrons don't pass through the infrastructure, they don't make any money. And there should be another layer that is not monopolized. So the discos they are monopolies at the moment. You have Ikeja, you have AEDC, you have EKDC in Lagos, you have AEDC. You only have AEDC. If I say I want to buy power from another disco, I cannot. I can only buy from AEDC, right? So if we do it in a way where the disco or an entity is in charge of the infrastructure, they're not in charge of selling, and then there's another entity that is in charge of selling, and I can choose which one I want. I can choose, maybe there are 5. I can say today I want to buy from Cyrus Enterprise. Tomorrow I want. So they would create what's it called, competitiveness, like what we have in the telecom sector. I think we need to do something like that to really turn this thing around and make an impact. So I think with all these things together, we'll have a headway.
Absolutely. And are you saying that the privatization reform that we had in 2013 was not thorough or complete enough? Is that your position?
I think it still creates monopolies, right? And it doesn't allow a free market. It doesn't allow for free market dynamics to fully come in place and for competitiveness to come in place, to drive innovation, to drive competitiveness, to lower the cost. I think it's not designed the way it is today, is not truly designed to allow for free market forces to drive demand and supply. That's what I believe.
Okay, absolutely. And I hope we have maybe a new, let's say, let's call it a new, another round of more liberalization of the sector, like you said. I think probably that would help out. Mr. Umar, I don't know if you have a rebuttal to that, or you have not a rebuttal, but basically a comment on that.
Yeah, yeah. So Daniel was absolutely right. So most of or I'll not say maybe a lot of the mini grid operating outskirts in some areas are paying tariff that is higher than ban A price. That is quite true. I know some close to even 500. But I think the difference lies in the middle. When those that are in village, number one, they have low consumption and they are 100% metered. So some of them, if they purchase a unit of 2, 3, or 5 units, it can take them 3 weeks, 2 weeks or more. There are some mini grids that I am well aware of. They try to incentivize or to stimulate consumption by giving the community some kind of appliances so as to stimulate consumption. So that's the reason why they are comfortable to pay that amount. And then I believe also I agree with him that if the tariff can be 300 in town and everybody is metered, a lot of people will come to the agreement that yeah, I can pay that tariff if the light will be available. So but the challenge we have in the urban areas is that people are even some people they have 24 hours light, they have meter, everything, but they are still complaining that the tariff is too high. So I may say it probably linked to 2 reasons. One, the psychology of us here. A lot of people are not familiar with paying electricity power because of past experience or how we have been, grown up here. So, and then other people look at the electricity as a government or maybe a social good, something that they are not supposed to pay some kind of money. It's only recently that Nigerians used to begin to maybe budget a huge chunk of their income in paying. So that's the reason why it will be like conflicting. You go to the rural area, you find people paying 300 tariff, but when you come to town, even a ban of 200, and let's use those ban that are receiving the supply 24 hours. you find people are still complaining. Probably because a lot of people are having high energy consuming appliances and they want to use that energy consuming appliances, yet they still complain that. So it's more like a conflicting objective. And at the end of the day, because somehow we refuse to detach the sector from government, it now turns to be a problem of the government, right? So if the tariff is high, instead of us to understand what we don't, we now blame it on the government. So, and the government at the end of the day, instead, what can they do? It's an emotional decision which led to the government trying to do something that they will how they will pity the citizens, so as to get their support or something like that. So I think the answer lies in the psychology and the way we observe the energy sector. That's major, I would say, the reason why people complain that the tariff is a bit high on the urban areas, why the rural areas are paying that high amount without any complaint.
So who will they blame now? And because the issue, I remember when the Enugu's controversy happened, and there was a back and forth on whether the states can reduce electricity or not, electricity
Yeah.
tariff, pardon me, or not. Who would the blame go to now? If tariffs go up?
You,
And do
you
you
know,
think that are we in the place where just a minute, are we
yeah,
are we in the place where states can decide that they're going to move closer to a more cost-effective tariff to other bands, not just band A, and because like I said, it's a little bit dicey. Obviously, it's a little bit dicey, but the blame now, would you go to the state now or the discos? If prices go up, and do state now have the power to raise those tariff themselves or bring it down, like we see in Enugu disco, given the new model?
yeah. So, still have the power to raise tariff. One thing is that for a long time, if tariff was increased, nobody is blaming the discos. Everybody blames the government because they believe that
Mhm.
government, from the regulatory angle, are the one approving or rejecting tariff increase. Rightly so. So the thing about it is the state can decide to reduce or increase. It's just a case of what when I discussed the last time, I said that you can do something that is legally possible but commercially, unsustainable. You can reduce tariff by, pressing the discourse or pushing them, but when it's not sustainable commercially, it will backfire. Thereby, you are going to have a very reduction in supply. That's a typical case of what happened in, what I said. They are rightly to reduce so, but then you can see that the commercial angle is that the parent company has cut supply by 50% to Enugu State. So these are the kind of issue you will have when your legal aspect, it's saying this, and then commercially it's not supporting the legal. Then you have a conflict, and when you have conflict, you will end up having scarcity of that goods, which
Mm.
indirectly might mean increasing the price of the electricity. So that's for that aspect. And then for the blame, of course, everybody, as I said, they are going to blame the government, and then it's an emotional decision. It relates to people finances, and utility, we can't do without it. So and that's the reason why, even if what you did, you may do your model right, do everything right, but there is that emotional decision that will tie the hands of government not to increase and the tariff. So it's a typical case of what we are seeing from Ban B2E. But at the end of the day, we have to do the right thing. Otherwise, we may still keep struggling with that kind of problem that we have.
Absolutely brilliant, Mr. Umar. It's always great to have this conversation with you and everyone here. I think we've almost run out of time. We have just about 6 minutes left. I could go on and on in these conversations, and it's always interesting to unravel what's going on. And I think one of the things we've been able to do today is to break down some of these, let's say, difficult concepts and difficult issues that are facing the that are facing the real estate sector in Nigeria. Like I said, I hope we get it right, and I would like us to have our final thought and what it's our own position, our final thought, whether it's about mini grid, whether it's about what the state should do, whether it's about what should be left out, or Mr. Omar talked about other legislative input in the National Assembly. What should they remove? What should they add to it? Whatever aspect of it that you want to take on. Let me start with a triumph for now.
Okay, so just going back to the previous conversation about the blame and the issue in metering, like I started with, if we're able to solve our ATC and C losses, we're up in very basic terms. The investors will come, they are sure of it, right? And when we now talk about the blame, who are we to blame? And you know, when we look at people complaining about now being in Bande and having to pay, and then you have conversations with these same people and you tell them this is still subsidized. It's a very different conversation because I mean, you can go on the internet and see people saying, oh yeah, they had two industrial fans, they no more use them. And they had to do away with it and get the small one because they are industrial fans. They will eat your electricity. And also, when you a couple of these people now actually also transition into using their own home solar system. You see, they now become much more, aware of how they use their electricity. So in as much as from, the regulations part, from the developers part, there's a lot of work going on. Also from the consumer's perspective, you can also see that by the time they become much more aware of how they use their electricity, they become more, they understand how to use the electricity. And like Mr. Daniel said, there are people that were willing to pay 300 and something as long as there was consistent electricity. If there is consistent electricity, I think a lot more people will be willing to pay, right? But then they now become more aware on how they use their electricity. So that, again, going back to what I said about how a lot of work needs to be done with educating the consumers themselves on, a lot of this, of course, dumbing it down, letting them know that it's not a one-sided government private thing. We are trying to serve you. And as much as we are serving you, you need to make sure that, you are taking care of our appliance, you are taking care of the technologies that are being used, that's the infrastructure. And yeah,
Absolutely.
yes. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. It's painful when you hear stories of, for example, tower vandalism, in certain places. Some of them that you have issues whereby it will cause blackout um, months, months, just because someone decided to vandalize the infrastructure. And so everyone has a role to play. And the issue about the cart before the horse, is it the tariff come first or the electricity, right? Are we supposed to have electricity first or supposed to have tariff first? Or does the tariff mean that I get more electricity, right? So which one should be fixed first to that? And I think that's like a big issue. So your final thought, Mr. Daniel, because of our time, I would like to hear from you also.
Oh no, I'll make it very quick. My thought is quite summarized. So for me, the government should create a structure, right? The right structure in the industry that would attract investment and also promote free market to allow the laws of demand and supply to drive competitiveness, right? Whatever structure that is. I'm not going to prescribe anything. And then secondly, of course, whatever price we get to in terms of tariff, the government should also look at its citizens and see who can not afford to pay this tariff, and such people should be subsidized. For me, that is the winning solution. Government creates structure, investment should flow through whatever price that is. Government should identify those people that cannot pay that price and subsidize those people. Bank is done. So
Absolutely concise and straightforward. And I think I agree with you also on the issue of structure that allow people to compete. I think one of the most profound points that is being made here is that we don't yet have that competitive market whereby people can decide whether I want to buy this from you or from that person, or and if that's the case, of course there will be low quality of service delivery, because discos can do whatever they like, knowing that you are tied to them and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely. Mr. Umar, your final thought.
Yeah, so my final thought will be on the government side on 2 to 3 points. One, I will at least love to see the government accelerate, substantive achievement on the metering. I am aware so far this World Bank metering has begun. and then they are also, planning on the PMI. I would have at least loved to see a massive, achievement or performance on that at least before election, so that the attention cannot be elsewhere. That's one. And then secondly, with respect to the current law, I would really want to see that they have been able to achieve passing that law, and then forcing recapitalization similar to what happened or what CBN is trying to do. So as money will come, which means government is helping you bring money on the other side, and you are also forced to look for finance. So the more you are forcing the owner of the business to inject money, the more he will be more serious in ensuring he solves the problem, because it is money sinking into the business. So you have to understand. And then for the REA guys, they are really trying. I see a lot of traction and activities with them. So I just hope that at least from now to the next 2 years, we can achieve more than where we are. And then when we are discussing, we can discuss another things, not on these consistent challenges that we have been reiterating over time. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Umar. That's brilliant. And thank you so much, everyone. I really do appreciate this session. I learned a lot myself, and I know the audience also do. These are brilliant men who actually they are in the space, and they've been doing massive, meaningful work in the space. Will make available their, of course, I think I have made available their contact on mail, so you can reach out to them on LinkedIn and converse with them on the services that they provide.